Here is a school teacher who was caught cheating on her husband, but that's not the worst part. I am a 49-year-old air traffic control supervisor and my wife is a 43-year-old school teacher. I met Kelly after being introduced to her by mutual friends over the next 2 years. Kelly and I got close and I asked her to marry me and she said yes. Then about a year later, my oldest daughter was born. She was followed by a son and a daughter. I was always careful to have date nights with Kelly. Neither of us let ourselves go. I never forgot the important things and always put Kelly and my kids first. My in-laws lived about a mile away and they babysat for us. Most of the time, the first hint something was wrong came when my mother-in-law called me at work and said, Kelly had not picked up the kids. I was going to go get them when my mother-in-law suggested they just stay there that night. When I got home, the house was dark. Kelly was not there. I called and spoke to the police and they said for 24 hours, they couldn't do anything. I got a shower, ordered some dinner and went to bed. I did not sleep well. So I was awake when I heard Kelly's car stop in the driveway. I walked downstairs about the same time she walked through the door. Kelly did not see me standing there in the dark and I could tell she was drunk. So I flipped on the lights to the dining room and she was startled. I just walked back to bed the next morning. I left at my normal time through the summer of 7 a.m. to go back to work. I also drove by my in-laws. I told my father-in-law that Kelly went out drinking last night and asked if he could go over there to make sure she was okay the entire day. I never once heard anything out of Kelly or for that matter, her folks. I took some time off and left early that day and went home. Kelly was sitting on the couch when I walked in. I just looked at her as I walked up to our bedroom. By the time I got out of the shower, Kelly was sitting on our bed saying how sorry she was for the night before. She told me she had lost out on a promotion at the school and went out to have some drinks to feel better for the first time in our marriage. I did not believe my wife. I did not want to do it. But I asked my boss for some time off. He did ask me why. And I told him Kelly is not behaving right and something is up. I did not tell Kelly. I was off work at 7. I just left and ate breakfast and waited for Kelly to leave for school. Something told me to search her drawers and closet. I did finally find some toys in the basement that by itself was not a smoking gun, but I knew this was 100% against Kelly in the past. So I drove over to the school that day and watched from a distance with my binoculars. I watched Kelly meet a man. I had no idea who he was. Then she kissed him. She followed him out of that parking lot, but I lost her several blocks down the road. I could not afford to hire a private investigator, but I did go speak to one. The private investigator asked me where Kelly taught at and I told him he asked for some information about her and the car she drove. He said that he had some other work in that area and would keep an eye out for her. I did finally find where Kelly was going after work. The private investigator called me about a week later and told me he followed them to that house and had some photos of them kissing before entering the house. I drove there that evening and even noticed the same car as before in the driveway. So I knew this was the house. I spoke to a good friend who is a religious man. He said adultery is a bad thing, but is something that can be overcome with prayer. He implored me to forgive Kelly for the sake of the family and do everything I could to get Kelly to stop this on the way home. I started crying and pulled off the road. I was still sitting there crying when a state trooper knocked on my window asking me if I was okay. I looked at him and said I was doing okay. I guess for a man that just discovered his wife was cheating, leading to his credit, that trooper said he understood my pain and walked away after telling me I did have to get going over the next several weeks. I cried for my marriage and for my kids sometime during those weeks. I stopped caring about what Kelly did, and I moved out here is where the nature of my job caught up to me. My supervisor asked me a direct question about my mental state. I told him about what Kelly was doing and he was forced to yank me from working as an active controller. I stayed on working but was working away from the control room. The FAA is good to provide therapists for us. So I spent several sessions with a great therapist who discovered her husband was cheating on her years before. This therapist was also an MD. And she asked me, how well was I sleeping? I said off and on. She prescribed me a light sedative that I took for almost a month. Once she cleared me to return, I was put back to work. I still did not tell Kelly I knew anything when she confronted me at my job. I asked her for a divorce. Kelly is not stupid. Her eyes got moist and she asked me, "How long did I know?" I said, "Going forward, let's not communicate and anything about the kids. Let's just do it through your folks." Kelly said, "I am not giving you a divorce. If you want one, you will have to file." Never once during that conversation did Kelly say, "I am sorry." So I hired an attorney and she told me I did not have enough to get a divorce using adultery in Virginia. So I got some help from my parents and hired the man. She suggested within days we had everything we needed. Sadly, my journey was about to get much darker. The next time I had my kids was with my father. He told me that he never was comfortable with those 3 beautiful kids being his grandchildren. None of my kids' eye color match mine or Kelly's. Then I really started to study the kids' faces. So I asked my attorney what was the best way to get DNA paternity testing done. She gave me the address of a place and I took my kids and we went. It was a while later when my attorney called me since Kelly got home before I did. I had the results sent to my attorney. She asked me to come in. So I did. Not even one of those kids was mine still. I followed my attorney's advice and never confronted Kelly. Fast forward to the divorce hearing. I will admit Kelly's attorney was good, but mine was better. Every time Kelly's attorney asked for something, mine shot it down by this time because of the explosive nature of the DNA test. My attorney had another test done by a larger nationally recognized company. It came back. The kids were not mine, and it was several days before the hearing when my attorney informed Kelly's attorney of those results. Kelly looked at me in that courtroom with what I can only describe as the same face of prisoner is about to be executed. "Look, I got my divorce on the grounds of adultery. I am not a monster. But while I still love those kids, they have the right to know who their real father is. My now ex-in-laws begged me to not do this. I told them I would always be close by, but I am not their father and their real father needs to step up." Now once this was finished for all intent and purposes, I was a free man. Kelly got no spousal support. I gave her the house. I walked away with my car and some personal belongings. Over time, I come to find out who that man was. He was, in fact, the biological father of all 3 of those kids. He was Kelly's high school sweetheart and she never really got over him. Their biological father is a dead. Kelly lied about that promotion at work. She did finally get it though and moved to the school system's main offices. Kelly is not doing well overall. Now I know she broke it off with her ex-boyfriend. I am doing okay these days. I have an old house and about 4 acres of property with a small lake on it. I spent some time remodeling the house. The judge during the hearing took careful consideration when it came to the kids. I did not want to lose my kids. I remember the female judge looking at Kelly and telling her that the kids' welfare was her top priority. So the judge continued the case for several weeks so we could work out a joint custody arrangement when we did it. It was 50-50. My oldest daughter expressed her desire to live with me. The judge granted this. By this time Kelly was a broken woman. She was sad that her oldest daughter wanted to live with me. This also meant the other 2 did as well. I paid for their health insurance and when the oldest daughter was 16, I bought her a used car. I told Kelly when you have the kids to not poison them against me. I warned her that her parents knew the full story and she would lose their support. The oldest daughter told me everything that was going on with her mother. The trail of men in and out, a hole in the doctor one man put there in a drunken fit of rage. Kelly had several trips to the because of this. About 3 years after our divorce, I contacted my attorney and she spoke with my oldest daughter alone. The attorney petitioned the court to reopen our divorce and it was granted. The same judge was presiding after that hearing. I was granted sole custody and Kelly was not allowed to have unsupervised visits with them. Her parents are good people and I trust them. So during this time, they supervise Kelly. Today as I write this story, it has been almost 13 years since Kelly and I were divorced. My oldest daughter is attending Duke University and will enter medical school in the fall. My son joined the army a while back and the baby daughter is still living with me these days. There are no more restrictions with Kelly visiting the kids, but honestly, while they don't hate her, all three have expressed to me they rather the visit stay short. One last piece of business was that deadbeat father. I confronted him on his job several years after the divorce. He said he was not the father and that Kelly was with many other men during those years. I countered, "Okay, I will pay for the test," to make sure his eyes showed panic. I simply told him it was not right that I am raising your kids with a deadbeat. You can't expect anything over time. I lost contact with him and have no idea what happened to him. I never pressed to know if he had any siblings. I was advised by the attorney to let sleeping dogs lie. I do think, all things considered, the kids and I made out okay. I will say this one more time. I will shout it from the rooftops. I love my kids, in my opinion. And all I am going to say is this man is a wonderful person who has a heart of gold to raise someone else's kids. Even after finding out all three kids are not his. I applaud him. A lot of men would bail the first chance they get and wouldn't continue to take on this responsibility after finding out they didn't follow those kids. I am not an attorney, but in some cases, this could be borderline paternity fraud, depending on the circumstances.